Have you seen the 1981 hit pursuit of D.B. Cooper, Without a Paddle? If not, of course you have watched TV shows like Prison Break, Renegade, and The Blacklist. All of these have one thing in common. They are based on this extremely interesting story of a guy who hijacks a plane, gets the ransom, and then jumps off the plane. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? What if everything in those movies and shows is true? The story of Dan Cooper isn't a myth, but it doesn't seem real either. Do you want to know what's his story? So let's get started. November 24th, 1971, just a day before Thanksgiving, when everyone was eager to meet their families, being grateful for the blessings and in a rush to finish their holiday preparations. A man named Dan Cooper bought a ticket for the Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305. A decent-looking 6 feet tall guy in his mid-40s, dressed in a suit and black tie, didn't really seem that suspicious. So he boarded the plane with a $20 ticket, and the flight took off without any nuisance. Everything was going smoothly until he handed a note to a flight attendant. The flight attendant didn't really pay attention because why would she? Being a flight attendant, it is common to receive chits from passengers with their phone numbers on them trying to flirt. That is probably what she thought and dropped the piece of paper in her purse. When the guy whispered to her about checking her purse and how he has a bomb, to back up his threat, he opened his suitcase a little to show her a glimpse of what he had inside, and, after seeing what's in it, panicking was quite justified. Still, the flight attendant, named Florence Schaffner, kept her cool and sat in the seat near Cooper. What was in the suitcase? The suitcase contained 8 red cylinders, 4 stacked on the other 4, red-colored wires, and a giant cylindrical battery. After showing her his suitcase, he told her that his demands included $200,000 in American currency. You might think that he was an amateur and just asked for the money and didn't have any escape plan. But his demands included the stuff needed for his escape plan as well. He asked for parachutes, out of which 2 were primary and 2 were reserve, and a fuel truck standing in Seattle to refuel the aircraft after it landed. After the plane landed, just as he promised, he let the 36 passengers go. While the aircraft was still in flight, he commented, "Looks like Tacoma down there." That means that he was familiar with the local area. One of the interesting things about his demand was that he asked for the ransom, $200,000, in $20 bills. In the early 21st century, that was worth $1.2 million easily. After the plane landed in Seattle, he let the passengers go, but he kept the staff on the plane. 2 pilots, a flight engineer, and a flight attendant were forced to stay on board, and upon his instructions, the plane was refueled. After that, he ordered the pilots to fly towards Mexico City and gave some specific instructions that might shock you a little. He asked the pilot to fly the plane at a height of 10,000 feet and at the speed of less than 200 knots. Somewhere between Seattle and Nevada, probably near Ariel, Washington, the authorities believe that Dan Cooper jumped off the plane wearing the parachutes and disappeared with the ransom money. This extremely unusual incident triggered one of the longest and the most exhausting and probably futile investigations in the history of FBI. Now, what does the FBI know about Dan Cooper? The first assumption was that since he had a decent knowledge of planes and the area over which the plane was flying, he probably was a part of the military at some point in his life. But when we take a look at his escape strategy, it was discovered that he wasn't an experienced skydiver, as the jump was dangerous and his reserve parachute was stitched shut for use in training. In the first 5 years, the count of suspects reached 800, but eventually all of them were dropped out. Some on the basis of DNA, some on the basis of physical appearance, while some on the basis of track record were eliminated. One of the prime suspects was Richard Floyd McCoy, known for attempting a similar crime after a few months of the Dan Cooper incident. One of the most interesting things in this case is that in 1980, years after FBI had run this case to the ground, a boy discovered about $5,800 buried near the Columbia River. The location of the money was somewhere between the north of Portland and 32 kilometers from Ariel, Washington. How did we know that was the ransom money? They were the same $20 bills with the same serial numbers. After that, no successful leads or tips were received by the FBI, and eventually the case was shut down in 2016 officially. No one knows if Dan Cooper is alive or if he's dead, although some speculate that surviving that kind of jump, that wasn't possible, so he must have died. But then again, the buried money suggests otherwise. Alright folks, that was all about the only unsolved air piracy in commercial aviation history. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to give us the motivation to create more such interesting videos. See you in the next video. Till then, take care.